birds will return, as the birds always do. When they come home to roost, they'll feast on you. Your pies will fade.
So you have the artifact this week?
I do. I have a bone to pick, if you could believe it.
What is that?
So here's the new strategy for getting rid of all the DSA style candidates is, well, of course we agree on all of the reasonable things that they're proposing, like the things that we've been keeping you from having for 25 years, universal health care and environmental justice and affordable child care, something to do about housing. These things that we promised we would veto if they showed across our desk, we now, of course, always supported. But there's one thing that shows you all are whack jobs, and it's too comical and ridiculous to take in front of the voters, which is, of course, abolish the police.
Right.
People like Piers Morgan are calling people whack jobs.
Piers Morgan?
Mm-hmm. And Bill Maher is promising to vote for J.D. Vance if one of these candidates is running for president, and the reason is this particular issue.
Yeah, but they're whiny old guys that don't reflect the base.
This is the party strategy, is to hammer the abolish the police.
Indeed.
The police line.
Well, it's hard when even Max Miller, the domestic abuser from Ohio, is saying that he's pro-Obamacare. Yeah, to get to the left of that.
You know, my record in Congress on the Ways and Means and House Foreign Affairs and bringing back money for our district,
right,
and standing up for the Ukrainian people and also voting to protect Obamacare during this entire time.
Everyone wants progressive. Most people want and need progressive social policies. So I guess you have to find something that's
right, but
more of a third rail.
Right, which is, the most important thing is to keep any of those things from happening by trying to find some way to undermine the DSA so that you can continue to pretend that these ideas are unpopular and that there's no reasonable method of getting to them. And in this case, they decided that there's going to be this one issue. It's not, of course, we don't agree with them on that, but we can work together with them on the things we all agree with, since there's no chance that we will be abolishing the police. It's not really a non-issue. It's these people cannot be admitted to the Democratic Party, despite the fact that we agree with all of the good things that they think is this one thing.
Yep.
So
and that's why you don't vote for them.
Right, of course.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not like, yes, I don't support the DSA. I don't support electoralism in general, and I think a lot of this is a mistake. But this particular tactic is found to be quite irksome, and the reason is this. Do you want to hear a whack job idea? Private prisons. That is a whack job idea. Whoever supports that idea should be immediately disqualified from having an opinion on the topic. Private prisons?
Yes, that is a terrible idea. You know what else is a bad idea?
Which was a bad idea?
Homelessness.
That is a whack job idea.
People living on the streets when there are homes available. Only some people, though.
Right.
But just some
only
people.
the mentally ill.
Yeah, there's just the ones that are really struggling and need help. Let's put them on the streets.
Here's another whack job idea. Goldman Sachs should pick the presidential candidates. That's a whack job. If you think that corporations are people, sorry, let's do that again. Here's another whack job idea. Corporations are people. If you think that corporations are people, you're disqualified from having an opinion on anything else. That is the craziest, most outlandish thing you can possibly think. The idea that abolishing prisons is more extreme and ridiculous idea that corporations are people, or that money should decide all of our political realities, and the more money you have, the more you can spend, the more say you have. And these are crazy ideas, right? The Democratic Party is founded on ridiculous things that they have worked to make mainstream,
like the necessity of whitewashing a genocide.
Right. That's a pragmatic thing.
We must do it. No, we must do it, practically or otherwise. Obviously,
and
we
if
have
you
to do
object,
it.
you're anti-Semitic.
There's no other option but to live in a world where you must not only accept but launder a genocide actively all the time. That's a normal idea.
Right. So the point being, like, there's places for common ground, and there's places of extreme disagreement. And this tactic of this one thing we can't possibly. But anyway, I think another thing that's starting to happen now is that this is the line from the sort of liberal left is, we never really meant that. That was a thing that we had to say during George Floyd because of woke, but we all don't even.
Who's saying that? DSA candidates?
Some of them, Bernie Sanders said it. Bernie Sanders said that no serious candidate that I support thinks that we should abolish the police. He was
never a defund the police
He actually
guy.
said we should never. He didn't even use abolish the police. He said no serious candidate that I support wants to defund the police.
Yeah.
Additionally, the Chapo Trap House guys went on a long tear about how like that's an aspirational 2,000 years in the future thing, but it's completely impractical and ridiculous.
Who the fuck cares what we're doing 200 years in the future?
Right. This is what liberalism is ultimately it's about striving for an ideal, which you don't care if it exists or not, but you feel morally superior for striving for it. But of course, and even in this case, you're not even really striving for it because obviously you can't have murderers running around, so you need prisons.
Yep.
And there's all kinds of reform that they would approve of, but the idea of getting rid of the police is ridiculous.
The intellectual history of of abolitionism is not liberalism, though. It's anarchists.
Yeah.
And Marxists.
And Marxists. And I think this is...
So the liberals just like co-opted it during George Floyd. So them walking away from it is not... doesn't really mean anything about the idea.
Of course. Right. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit.
Well, I guess it's just what I'm saying. Well, I guess what I would say is that the idea was not an ideal. The idea was not this is maybe a destination we could get to. Let's sell it in the meantime for the people who actually like are the architects of the idea. DEI liberals were not the architects of the idea.
So on the one hand, I want to stress that like this is a tactic. These people don't care about any of these ideas. They think they're all non-starters. Their job is to make sure that they never happen, and they'll do whatever they can.
Who? Bill Maher, Pierce Morgan?
The Democratic establishment, of which Bill Maher is a spokesman, want to destroy the DSA and any threat of doing any progressive politics. And their way of doing that is to harp on this thing. They could care less. It could be tomorrow. It'll be something else, like whatever the plank that the DSA has about climate change. It'll be something else. But for our purposes, though, like what I would like to do is instead of immediately disposing of this as a ridiculous idealistic notion, and I do think that there's an idealistic or idealist version of this, which did become popularized by the George Floyd era. And just for the most dramatic example of this, do you remember Chaz or Chop? And you
refresh my memory.
So there was in Seattle, there was a little autonomous zone that they created during this George Floyd protest where the police were not allowed, and they basically had their own situation, which is something that we supported at the time and probably would again. And they were experimenting with some ways of dealing with, like, how do we do security without the police present? And I think there's some interesting questions about, like, how do you go about it? And I think that they did not stumble on the right one. So I'm going to read you a recent update of a pretty outrageous headline from the Time. This is the Capitol Hill Seattle blog, community news for all the Hill. Execution. Report details video evidence and new witness claims about unsolved killing of teen at CHOP, a joint investigative journalism project from the Seattle Times and KUOW, has made new revelations about the CHOP killing of teen Antonio Mays Jr., including an account from a previously unknown witness and video evidence the reporters say marked the killing as an execution-style shooting after a night of drive-by panic around the protest zone. So what happened here is a teenager came from out of state to the CHOP area because they were excited about it. Something happened with them driving a Jeep around with a couple of other kids in the car. Until now, it was believed that only one other person was in the car, a 16-year-old who was also shot. But now there appears to have been a third teenager in the backseat of the car who the police have never spoken to. So this is how good the police are. They never spoke, never took a witness count, didn't even know they were there.
Yeah.
This journalism project, investigative project was looking into it and discovered this kid. And the kid's account is not what we've heard. So what we've heard is that the Jeep was driving around a little bit recklessly, and then some of these self-appointed security guards opened fire on it and killed them. This report now is that someone, after the Jeep had crashed, someone walked up to the Jeep, shot the 2 people in the front seat, and took off. So this to me is the
security, the person who is supposedly on security took off.
Yeah. Well, no one knows who he is. This is an unsolved
So it's
murder.
not even clear that he was involved with security.
I mean, who knows? I mean, who gets to decide? Like, I wasn't there, so like, was there a process for deciding which of these guys were going to be security, and was there like a method of screening and some sort of political accountability? And I have no idea.
Right. Well, I'm just asking that no one has confirmed who this person is, so no one knows if
no
they
one
were
knows. I mean, that's the story. The
formally
story
or
was
informally
these
involved.
guys were walking around with guns to keep the place safe, and one of them shot this car up.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, this is the big mistake that's made, which is it is a liberal error, which is if we call the police a different name and have them look like a different thing, but essentially be the same thing, then they will be a different thing, which is not abolishing the police. It's just sort of repackaging it.
Yeah, I don't think that's what this is, though. I mean, I think, if you turn them into community security officers under democratically elected mayors with partnerships with the capitalist hospitals, that would be dressing them up. That would be a liberal dressing them up and doing the same thing.
Okay.
I think if you say, let's make them more like the police in Sweden and Great Britain and Germany, that would be a dressing them up to make them to do the same thing.
Okay.
I think a autonomous zone that's experimenting with some sort of community-based security that might end up with empowered asshole vigilante guys doing terrible things. It's not the same cosplay. It's a different one.
But it's a cosplay? Is that?
Well, it's a.
I mean, this to me is
it's
just
not
like
liberalism.
I think it is, though.
And I don't think.
I think it is.
I think it's just.
I think this is like I'm a good person, so the pressures and authority and power that comes with this anointed position, I will handle well. And that's the liberal thing of like, I'm different than these cops. But what you end up doing is recreating the same patterns of violence, which is essentially racist police killings by a person who's trying really hard not to identify as a cop, but is in every practical sense acting like a cop.
What's liberal about that?
Because it's not about power and changing power and changing like the material of the relations. It's about replacing one person with another person in that role and calling them something else.
I understand that, but if we're talking about a theoretically autonomous zone and a theoretically now this is not what, like, this is a fantasy that you can do this in like 6 city blocks and suddenly have an autonomous zone. But like,
it's kind of amazing that they let it.
If you understand that this is what it is, like, let's just pretend this is like the fantasy of whatever, Occupy Wall Street. These, like, we're taking it over and we're going to do it our way. This is, what's it? Paris Commune.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're not, now, whether they're actually achieving that and whether it's actually like a different, outside the capitalist process, community-oriented process to figure out how to do, principled security. It doesn't seem like it probably was. I don't think they probably had enough runway or enough political organization. But like, in theory, that would be a way to get to something that's not like liberal cosplay of policing.
Yeah. I mean, I think my ultimate answer to this is like you need some sort of democratic centralist organization of people with principled political alignment beforehand, and I think that there's an attempt to shortcut some of that work by being like, we have similar principles. I mean, you and I both agree that like the presence of security and like community-based security is not the same thing as the police. It's just this one sort of reeked to me of like the type of thing that is used as a cudgel against abolitionists, even to this day. And that happened not because this is a failure of like abolitionist politics so much as it's a failure of a particular type of abolitionist politics, which is like hopelessly like short-sighted and liberal in its approach. But I respect like what you're saying about like,
I think you're not going to overnight have trustworthy armed men the first people that say, don't worry, I have guns and I can walk around with them, are not the ones you probably are going to want walking around with guns.
Yeah.
For example. So like, and probably they did not have the political organization and discipline in, what is it, CHOP, to like manifest a different way of policing that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that was, I don't really believe that that's just because it's like liberalism. I think it's more like they are products of a really fucked up society. And in these like these volatile, hyped up moments, everyone's like, oh my gosh, we only have this much time. We have to do it. And the adventurous take over, and they're not the right ones to be in charge.
Yeah.
And then shit happens.
Yeah. The people are like, oh, I finally get a chance to use my gun.
But in the absence of an organized left, I wonder what else you'd expect.
I wouldn't.
We just sit on our hands. Yeah. We just can't do security in the meantime. I mean, it's not a great option.
Yeah. I mean, we did support this at the time. So
we wait for the DSA style candidates to very, very slowly not defund the police, but rather fund other things and pretend that's defunding the police. I mean,
to laugh it off, as AOC said this week, is like, woke one was crazy, and we had all kinds of stuff we were pushing for.
Right, and we're going to talk about this in the rest of the segment of like, well, is it really defunding or is it funding other things? And it's fine for it to be like slowly building a different society so you don't end up with the assholes shooting up the Jeep. But is the pathway to that like, oh, we can't do anything that's too new or extreme or adventurous, or we can't do anything because we're not ready. So we do nothing? Like,
yeah.
It's
a hard question.
It's also, it's like, it sounds like they still don't know a lot of information about what was going down there, and you probably aren't ever going to, and it probably is not also an indictment of the politics of all the people there.
Yeah, apparently the other people who are involved in security refused to speak a word to the police about anything that they saw.
Well, it's reasonable not to talk to the police.
Sure, I mean, absolutely, but like there was a wall of silence. I mean, my question about there
should be a wall of silence. That is a good choice. Even if they are really upset about what happened, they should not be talking to the police about it.
My question is less, why don't you turn this guy into the police, and more like, why, if we're all shooting people who are acting badly, this guy is the racist murderer, whether he intended to be or not.
So your suggestion to the adventurous violence is to do some more.
No, I mean, I don't know. Okay.
I mean, they have bad options all around, so they're probably doing the only thing they can do, right?
Mm-hmm. I thought that we could take this idea seriously.
Which one? The abolition?
Abolishing the police,
yeah.
abolishing prisons. Separately from obviously you don't need to believe in that in order to fight for universal health care. Then the two do not need to be connected, but regardless of what the candidates say. But even on that, I thought we could take the issue seriously by listening to Angela Davis. So Angela Davis she wrote the book on this in the United States, and she has done a lot of work on this in her career post her like radical era.
She would say it's during her continued radical era.
Well, I would not say that.
Post her activist era.
Okay.
Amidst her academic era.
Yeah. Okay. She gave a famous interview on Democracy Now! In 2020 about the George Floyd protests, and then her take on prison abolition. So I thought we could listen to a little bit of that, take seriously the idea, and talk about it a little bit.
The book she wrote on it is called Are Prisons Obsolete?
Yes, that's correct. And she's been, this has been a major like thread for like political speaking and writing since that. All right, you ready for Angela Davis? This is and the best part about this is it's our favorite domestic terrorist, Amy Goodman.
I thought Angela Davis was our favorite domestic terrorist.
No, she's not in the list. I mean, how mad are you?
I know.
You're Angela Davis. You're looking at the list of left-wing terrorists, and Amy Goodman's on there.
She's probably feeling so old.
Yeah.
She's like, how could this have happened? I've slowed down too much.
All right, here we go.
Angela Davis, you've long been a leader of the critical resistance movement, the abolition movement. And I'm wondering if you can explain the demand as you see it, what you feel needs to be done around defunding the police, and then around prison abolition.
Well, the call to defund the police is, I think, an abolitionist demand, but it reflects only one aspect of the process represented by the demand. defunding the police is not simply about withdrawing funding for law enforcement and doing nothing else. And it appears as if this is the rather superficial understanding that has caused Biden to move in the direction he's moving in. It's about shifting public funds to new services and new institutions, mental health counselors who can respond to people who are in crisis without arms. It's about shifting funding to education, to housing, to recreation. All of these things help to create security and safety. It's about learning that safety, safeguarded by violence, is not really safety. And I would say that abolition is not primarily a negative strategy. It's not primarily about dismantling, getting rid of, but it's about re-envisioning. It's about building anew. And I would argue that abolition is a feminist strategy, and one sees in these abolitionist demands that are emerging the pivotal influence of feminist theories and practices.
That's certainly how I understand abolitionism.
Which is what?
Abolitionism, and I understand it less from Angela Davis and more from Ruthie Wilson Gilmore, but it's always been abolition is not about absence. It is about it's about building. It is about a presence. It is about a different way of radically reimagining what you're building.
Right.
It is not about removal of something.
Yeah. So it's not just we'll just send all the police home and we'll open up all the prisons and then society will figure it out.
No, it's not that at all. And it's also not. I think that they've located one of the primary mechanisms of our society that is very problematic and highly manipulative and highly, like, they're saying the carceral state, the way we incarcerate people, the way we treat legality, the way we accept policing in our neighborhoods is super central to how we operate.
Yeah.
Like it's so central that they've said this is how we're going to locate our intervention on this, because you cannot understand our society without this. And if you imagine decentering that and doing a bunch of other stuff, what happens? So yes, it is a removal of those things, but the reason they've located it there is because of how carceral our society is.
One of the things that I think is important for people to sit with when they reflect on what the world would be like without police and prisons is people say, well, what is going to happen to like the murderers and the rapists and stuff like that? And I think it is one of the problems of this is the assumption that in human nature is a certain level of horrific antisocial behavior, which can't be written out, right? So there's human garbage that has to be thrown away.
Yep.
And they will always exist. And your proposal, I think the proposal is more about like, mass incarceration is not successful because it does not prevent these things. What it does is it gives us a sense of justice after the fact when it works, which it doesn't often work. I mean, the main function of the police, as far as I can tell, is to break strikes, protect private property, and then to show up when you say you've been burgled and make sure you're not committing insurance
It's
fraud.
all protecting property.
Yeah.
It's all protecting private property.
And not your property. Like the richer
important
party.
people's
right,
property.
Right. Like
Yeah.
when you
the
lose,
insurance
when
company's
you
property.
Are, yeah, right. If you are burgled, they're worried about you making an insurance claim you shouldn't make more than they're worried about getting your property back.
Yeah.
They don't do that.
And we know the fuckers like Bill Maher are not making good faith arguments about what defund the police means, but when they're talking about abolitionism, they're talking about funding and building life-giving institutions that shift how society operates, which makes the carceral side, the private carceral side that we're so committed to, unnecessary. Not just unfunded, but unnecessary.
Right. That's, I think, the point here is like people feel it is effective because it puts criminals in jail, right? But what it doesn't do is it doesn't prevent crime.
It doesn't do that. It also gives you a person you get to call so that you can abandon responsibility to the people around you. It is a very effective way to offload responsibility.
Right.
Even though it doesn't work, you call them and nothing gets better. But you don't need to know that because you placed the call and you moved on with your day.
Yeah.
So it's a way to sort of, and I do think like having emergency helpers that you can call is a great idea. But like our reliance on having these sort of like professional and also highly carceral, highly biased to protect private property, highly biased to hurt certain people and not other people. We rely on them to take away the burden of thinking about the people around us and our own agency and interacting with them.
Yeah.
And
intervening.
You see something weird and you're just like, we'll just call the cops.
Part of this is like this, there's this cult, almost a fetish for privacy, which I think is a very, is an essential part of like the capitalist culture.
Well, except for when it comes to abortion.
I don't think. See, that's the thing about abortion is, I don't think it needs to be private. It needs to be private in this framework because they're trying to keep it away from people who like want to control women. But there's no other reason why it would like.
Well, the entire Roe argument is around privacy and medical privacy.
Basically, but that's a legal framework to separate the decision from the legislatures. But it's not. I mean, the powerful women are women who say, "I had an abortion. It's completely normal. You should not be ashamed of it."
I'm just saying that we have a country that supports, and we have a country and a culture that is pro-privacy when it comes to
I see what
many things.
Except for that one.
Except for that one.
That's
and
the state's business.
Dr. Erica Schwartz, who was just confirmed as CDC director on Wednesday, August 5th by the Senate. She's a former deputy surgeon general from Trump's first term. Has gone on record to say abortion surveillance is a major focus of her tenure.
No, that's good.
So I agree that the United States has a obsession with privacy, and I think it comes from like the sort of moving across the vast plains and staking your claim and
your homestead.
No one goes on, like, it's your big area of land and it's yours alone, and you're like,
it's your castle.
You're it's your but and
it's no one's business what goes on inside it. It's no one's business what your financial situation is. And there's
a big old asterisk around abortion, and also there's a lot of there's an asterisk when it comes to people calling police on one another too.
Yeah,
that happens
and
a lot,
not to mention like
culturally,
the tech industry. So now that you mention it, there is this. I stand by what I said. I think there is a fetish around privacy, but increasingly the fetish is I have a right to absolute privacy and you do not, and
you get to buy it. You have to be wealthy enough to get it.
The other doesn't get it. The other is open to my scrutiny 100%. I get to know who's trans. I get to know what medical procedures you want. I get to know what churches you go to, but you absolutely can't. The in-group is not to be surveilled in this way, and of course they are. Right, the whole thing is like whatever they can do to black people today, they're doing to everyone tomorrow.
Well, if you get elite enough, you maybe are free of it.
Yeah,
if you're in the top,
I mean, I guess if you're getting married at
Elon
Madison Garden, I mean, Elon Musk. Here's the thing about Elon Musk, though. Elon Musk is being surveilled by the security state, 100%. I mean, you'd have to be crazy not to think he's.
No,
they
are, but I guess I guess it's not that you have privacy; it's that you have the right to.
Privacy from his neighbors, maybe. Privacy from the community.
Well, I do think that these oligarchs expect to have completely gated like nation states that are their own, and I expect that there's a level of privacy that they will garner from that.
They may get much more of it in the near future than they have now.
And I also expect that they're getting monitored similar to how we are, although it will not be used against them in the same way, and they know that. Mm-hmm. Because they control the outcomes, but I bet you their privacy increases.
Yeah, I mean their capture of the state will afford them a lot of, like, they will be the security state. Yeah, fairly soon.
In this case, Taylor Swift was the vanguard, and she said, "I've earned the privacy."
Okay.
Explain that further.
I want us to see feminism not only as addressing issues of gender, but rather as a methodological approach of understanding the intersectionality of struggles and issues. Abolition feminism counters carceral feminism, which has unfortunately assumed that issues such as violence against women can be effectively addressed by using police force, by using imprisonment as a solution. And of course, we know that Joseph Biden in 1994, who claims that the Violence Against Women Act was such an important moment in his career, the Violence Against Women Act was couched within the 1994 Crime Act, the Clinton Crime Act. And what we're calling for is a process of decriminalization, not recognizing that that threats to safety, threats to security come not primarily from what is defined as crime, but rather from the failure of institutions in our country to address issues of health, issues of violence, education, etc. So abolition is really about rethinking the kind of future we want, the social future, the economic future, the political future.
So I think you could get a lot of mileage on the feminist methodology gets you intersectionality, which is great. You should use that mileage. But I think what's more interesting about her answer is noting for folks that if your interest in violence and how it's perpetrated against women, and the fact that we live in a society where violence against women and violence committed by men is a very real and scary thing. If your solution is just put them in prisons and call the police, you are advancing what she called, I think, carceral feminism. Yeah. You're advancing I wouldn't even call it like a basic reform solution. You're advancing a fascist authoritarian. It's an authoritarian response, and it is not in your favor. It is not going to help you. Yeah. It is not making you safer. No. And I think that that's a very good point. And I think locating the Violence Against Women Act, which obviously, I mean, Biden being the poster child of that should tip everyone off that we're not dealing, especially millennials are like, really, we're not celebrating that. But that's located in the broader crime.
It seems like an excuse just to fund the police more.
It was just a way for that ilk of Democrats to identify the super predators who are the Clintons identified as the black folks who lived in urban centers, and to flood money into prison and policing and not into healthcare and social services
and jobs and education.
Anyone who knows anything about violence against women and domestic and intimate partner violence will tell you that the last thing that helps is policing in prisons, and making the police better funded does not help when calling the police always makes it worse. And you still have the same, even if that wasn't the case, even if it was like we had magical pixie police that don't make the men more angry. If you have men that are alienated and underemployed and have no fucking idea how to function and are under extreme amounts of stress, you will have intimate partner violence. Yeah. So don't fix it with policing. And if that's where you've ended up, policing in prisons because you care about violence against women, I don't even know. Honestly, that's such a badly formulated idea that it would that's the insane idea. Yeah. That's the idea that that shouldn't be touchable.
Right. Not to mention that the demographic in the United States is probably most likely to be violent towards women or police officers. But
well, certainly for trans women, I don't know. I mean, broadly, the demographic that's most likely to be violent against women is men. Right. And then you start to break it down, and I don't know what happens.
The domestic violence rates among police officers.
Oh yeah, that's high. Not great.
Yeah. So having more police probably doesn't help with the actual statistics very much.
It's about revolution, I would argue.
You write in Freedom is a Constant Struggle, neoliberal ideology drives us to focus on individuals, ourselves, individual victims, individual perpetrators. But how is it possible to solve the massive problem of racist state violence by calling upon individual police officers to bear the burden of that history and to assume that by prosecuting them, by exacting our revenge on them, we would have somehow made progress in eradicating racism? So explain what exactly you're demanding.
Well, neoliberal logic assumes that the fundamental unit of society is the individual, and I would say the abstract individual. According to that logic, Black people can combat racism by pulling themselves up by their own individual bootstraps. That logic recognizes, or fails rather, to recognize that there are institutional barriers that cannot be brought down by individual determination. If a Black person is materially unable to attend the university, the solution is not affirmative action, they argue, but rather the person simply needs to work harder, get good grades, and do what is necessary in order to acquire the funds to pay for tuition. Neoliberal logic deters us from thinking about the simpler solution, which is free education. I'm thinking about the fact that we have been aware of the need for these institutional strategies at least since 1935, and of course before, but I'm choosing 1935 because that was the year when W.E.B. Du Bois published his journal, Black Reconstruction in America. And the question was not what should individual Black people do, but rather how to reorganize and restructure post-slavery society in order to guarantee the incorporation of those who had been formerly enslaved. The society could not remain the same, or should not have remained the same. Neoliberalism resists change at the individual level. It asks the individual to adapt to conditions of capitalism, to conditions of racism.
I think this is an important point because a lot of the crime that exists are people's basically failed attempts to cope with the social conditions of capitalism, and like the whole individual versus like collective, which when you put primary has a lot to do with privacy. Actually, like if you say, well, the collective is primary, then the collective has a lot of right to know what's going on. Like for instance, to know if there's domestic violence going on in your household, right, and to intervene in that in some way, maybe before it escalates. But more fundamentally, like most of what we consider to be trauma is extremely contextual. Like one of the things that makes a negative event a trauma is like how it's understood and like metabolized by the individual, which is like a cultural and institutional thing, and also how the society reacts to it. Mm-hmm. Like we know, for example, that this is called the dehumanization of loss. When something horrible befalls a white child, and everyone freaks out about it, and this is the worst thing, and they get all kinds of attention, and they get all kinds of support and services and stuff like that. When the same event befalls a Black child, and this is supposed to happen, it doesn't really matter. You're getting a very key lesson about the value of your humanity, and that changes the nature of that trauma, and changes the way that it changes your psychology and changes the way that you approach problems as you age, right? You see different outcomes because of this. If we take a more like collective approach to solving some of these problems, I think you do see just like a drop in crime. Like that's prevention of crime, more than like the threat of violence. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really well documented that family violence, child abuse, intimate partner violence, all those things increase. All those things are predictably going to increase in the future when there's a notable decline in the workforce of a community or neighborhood. So if you see a neighborhood have a notable decrease in workforce, in 12 months, you're going to see a notable increase in like child abuse cases. Like these connections are like extremely well evidenced. And that's just one of many examples. You could look at like what happens with people when they have medical debt? What happens with people when they have chronic stress disorders? Like,
Yeah.
what happens to people when they have food insecurity or like ongoing homelessness issues or ongoing just like home anxieties around being able to have a house to live in? These things result in people doing things or that are both like honestly healthy and unhealthy coping mechanisms. I mean, trying to game systems to get money or committing petty crime to like feed your family, to me, is like a relatively healthy coping mechanisms. It can still get you
Definitely
locked up. And then people do things that are really, really unhealthy and antisocial, like
and self-destructive
violence and drugs. And so like we know we have an enormous amount of research, and most people walking down the streets would tell you that actual crime is a result of what's happening to people. And what's happening to people, if you dig a little bit, is capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So like I actually don't think this idea is even hard for most people to metabolize.
She's talking about this because this is the sympathetic angle, which is if you have some compassion and sympathy for people who commit crimes, you can see some ways to interdict along the pipeline.
Well, you don't even need to have compassion for those people. You can just, if you have compassion for people who experience life stress and precarity living in this society, even if you are not amongst the people who are at the extreme edges or committing crimes, you know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Like have a couple weeks of a stressful health event and you know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And also like if your compassion is for the victims of crime, that again, carceral state
decrease the crime.
Yeah, the carceral state. They call justice is taking a person who's done a horrible thing and putting them in a cell for a really long time. And having them watch basically their life tick away without being able to do anything meaningful either for themselves or the world. But the crime still happened. The pain was still caused. Like that's not this. If that's justice, fine. But like, aren't you interested in reducing the incidence of crime? By the way, did you see that New York City had like the lowest like crime rate in an extremely long time? It's got to drive all these people crazy. These MAGA people crazy. They're claiming it's just they're cheating on the reporting because it couldn't possibly be true. But
I'm sure Bill Maher's real mad.
Your idea of like let's say that 99% of crime goes away. Let's say that we run the revolution. We keep the prisons around because we need to fill them with capitalists.
There will definitely be crime and needing for force during the revolution. Right. But you're saying during the transitional phase, okay, there are all kinds of crazy things are going to happen. You're not going to get rid of prisons. You're not going to stop punishing crime, etc. But eventually, let's say that you have achieved 99% reduction in crime, but there's still people who are just something is fundamentally wrong with them. They're like psychopaths or hopelessly antisocial. What is the proposal? What is your proposal for like, so forget like the sympathy for people, but like, what do you actually do about crime and people who insist on committing it? This is like, to me, this is a very silly thing to spend any time on.
Tell me why. Because
I think that this is the question this is like the gotcha question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're talking about the fringe cases. We're talking about the small, especially generations out, we're talking about an extremely small percentage of the human population. So focusing on what you do with an extremely small percentage of the population, to me, is
silly,
really trivial. I mean, you could basically do anything. Like any answer is going to have such a minor,
I see.
Minor impact.
Like if immediate execution would result
in
few deaths.
Like I'm not going to go on record and be like immediate execution of the psychopaths, but like it really would not matter. Like,
okay.
You're going to have.
I agree. Actually,
you're going to have people doing things that are like mild versions of not showing up well, and they could have at some point been criminal all the time, and those will be managed very naturally. And then you're going to have people with extreme behaviors that are, I guess, antisocial and dangerous. But I do think it's like we're talking about the like super fringe cases. And I don't know. You want to lock them up. You want to like, if they're unhealthy to themselves and others, I could see a reasonable answer to say that if we have the resources, we keep them alive and keep them like comfortable and try to make them fine enough.
Okay.
I don't have a politics or a ethic that says that they're owed anything. I also don't have a belief that it's like focusing on, you get these gotcha questions on all sorts of stuff with like, what's the post-revolution like? It's like, well, it's like focusing on it's minutia.
Yeah. It's sort of like, I mean, you can't possibly have a food system because occasionally someone will get food poisoning. Like, and we can reduce that as much as possible. But like, what do you do? It's like, what you do is you deal with it.
Right.
I think part of this is like, people like this has to do with like the offloading responsibility to an institution. Like, people are used to thinking it's not just unless there's a system, which we all are like less than that system. Communism like isn't about a system that has authority over people that makes sure. Let's not like. I think this is one of the things that people really get wrong about communism. Communism is not a guy building a maze and dropping all of us rats in there, and if he constructs the maze correctly, then we'll all behave ourselves.
Yeah,
we'll
like
all get to
you
equally
just
share
like
the
crack
cheese.
human nature, right. and it's not constructing a bureaucracy that is somehow apart and different from the people.
Right.
So that is something that many of us are very used to. So there is something going on outside of us that is more intelligent, more correct, more responsible. It's the police, it's the insurance company, it's the Supreme Court justices.
And it's that sense that there's something almost supernaturally grander than the people that make it up is the thing that anarchists object to about the state, and which I don't think exists. I think it's a fantasy. Like it's an error of observation, basically, that you imagine this thing out there that's a thing which is greater than just a bunch of people doing
I think it's an error of observation that has been deliberately exploited and crafted and made engineered so people are more alienated from one another, they're more alienated from themselves, and they self-police and self-censor because they think they're smarter, better. There's not people out there, but like bodies, like institutional bodies that are more important than them. Yeah. Even though it's not true, it's definitely used on purpose. And I don't think that will be the case under communism. In my estimation of what that would look like, no one could possibly have that observation. Yeah. It would make no sense.
The thing about it is there is no nanny. There is no one coming to tell you what you're supposed to do when something happens. You are supposed to figure it out with the people in your community.
And there are structures of governance to make that work at various scales. But they are not. It's true. I mean, people will say like, "Oh yeah, there's no systems, there's no structures, there's no getting party line, there's no like this is the decision from on high."
All of that is only thing that's left is voluntary association. None of that stuff at the highest level of development. It is not the case that someone else is going to come in and fix it for you. It is up to you and everyone else to figure out what to do as peers.
As peers, as a collective, because there will be ideas about collectivism and there'll be practicalities about collectivism that are unlike what most people have any idea have any real experience with. Yeah. So even though I don't know if I didn't know you were an anarchist, but if it's this is quite a way to find out. But if it is truly, and it is, I think I agree that it would be all voluntary association, but it's not like voluntary association of like people we are now, the ideas we have now, the systems we have now. And you would actually you would find yourself naturally, and people do this already, but I think it would be in this world, you'd much more naturally agree to like compromises for collectivism than you might now, because you would just experience it differently.
Yep. Yeah, and again, like you have to stretch yourself. This is not voluntary association because voluntary association is a universal moral good. And it is also not voluntary association because that is being enforced against people's will. It is the case that there will be no bodies enforcing association.
So it will be the case. Is voluntary.
It is the case that at a highest level of human development, at the highest level of, I would say, human maturity, that is what the human being is. It is like saying the lion tribe is a tribal, like it's what they do. That's what they do. There's no body that says you all have to live in a tribe and the women have to hunt. And it's just, that is what a lion is. This is what people will be.
Pride.
What did I say?
Tribe.
Pride.
So I was like, there's a tribe.
Yeah, there's a tribe
of people that worship lions. I'm
Yeah.
like, now you're doing human culture and mores.
Well, anyway, I think you get what I mean.
I don't believe that humans are biologically determined to live in communism.
It's not biological. It's a material. It's a fact of the material reality of human development and like the development of the means of production.
I mean, and lions do what lions do because it's the material reality of what the situation they're
exactly.
in. But a lot of the material reality is their
I see.
biology.
Their biology.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So you are an anarchist who will be voting for DSA candidates because they are defunding the police, correct?
You got it.
Did I nail it? Is that
actually only thing I like that they're saying is abolish the police.
I mean, so wait, just to make one point, is Angela Davis giving them all a really nice exit ramp where they can be like, I'm in favor of defunding the police, but it's not about defunding them now. It's about funding some other stuff first so we can live in a different society.
Yeah, I think that's what most of them think. Most of them say, let's defund the police chunk by chunk. You go after the swollen budgets. You reinvest that money in the communities in ways that actually prevent crime and make people's lives better.
Through electoral reform. And to me, this is like, it is inexcusable that that's not the mainstream Democratic Party position. That's an extremely, to me, like describing it that way, use electoral reform to take some money from this bloated budget and move it to this budget and get better results seems like a very basic and should be mainstream position, which kind of gives me the yuck that we've got Angela Davis.
I agree.
And others who are radicals and communists and whatever she's calling herself these days. Ruthie is a communist. She's not saying it. Because they're giving them they're creating talking points for DSA candidates to justify really basic electoral reform.
Yeah, and they're not even. I mean, most
and
of the
they're getting nailed by Bill Maher,
this,
and they can't even say this, but they're also giving them like cover from the left, basically.
Yeah. And I think this is, like you said, this is one is it reveals the nature of the actual issue, which is it isn't about crime. It's not about preventing crime. They don't care if you're preyed on by criminals. They certainly don't care if poor black people in Chicago are preyed on by criminals,
and they definitely don't care about the lengthy research and political theory and excellent intellectual history behind what this movement actually is.
Yeah.
They're going to paint it as they're opening the prison doors because they're lunatics.
Yeah.
And they hate you. And then the actual candidates won't even do that. They're not even, will walk away from it and won't even say, they'll say things like, oh, I'm not taking money away from that bloated budget.
Right.
God forbid.
Yeah. And the reason for that is the police need to be enormous militarized armies that are there to control the population. That's what the Democrats care about. Every time there's a need for police reform, they increase police budgets and they swell them with particular types of training and lots of militarized weaponry because they need them to be able to. And the more things break down, the more they need that. So that is why there's been an explosion in like SWAT gear.
Yeah.
Like they all have these like huge lockers full of this shit because they don't care about any of that stuff, any of the social services and stuff, because that doesn't give them the ability to like put down uprisings.
Right. And if you want to get really intersectional, you can research about how that overlaps with the IDF. And then you can really understand what's happening with like Democratic lobbyists and funding for Democratic elected officials.
Yeah. So that's the thing about this is like this, what Angela Davis is saying is like just mainstream liberalism, essentially, as far as I can tell.
Well, she's trying to get it through electoral reform. It certainly is.
Right. And the Democratic Party is a proto-fascist or like a incubating a fascist state by creating a loyal police force, which is an army of the wealthy.
And now you have a slightly more progressive base who is pointing out that there are fully electable DSA vibe candidates that they like the vibe of. And amongst that vibe is things that are kind of defund the police, although all of them will walk away from it.
They will.
And the Democrats are seeing that mainstream establishment Democrat politician blob is seeing that as a massive threat. And they have to even though no one's actually really, as far as I can tell, defunding the police, or more importantly, funding the stuff that would decrease crime otherwise.
Yeah.
They have to punish it. So I guess they're sticking Bill Maher and Pierce Morgan first because they started with their C team. But I imagine we'll get to C plus team. We'll have Van Jones. We're still in the C team, but we'll get to the B team. I don't know. Will we get like Susan Sarandon? I don't know.
If they had a B team, maybe they would have done better in the last election. Oprah, I don't know.
Susan Sarandon and Oprah.
Yeah. And then so you have those two positions.
Kanye
third
West,
position is
LeBron James.
Right. No, I don't think so. I don't think those two. I think you treat all of these prisons like the Bastille, and you have Bastille Day tomorrow. Tomorrow.
You want to explain that reference?
The Bastille Day was when the people of Paris rose up and freed all the prisoners in the Bastille, which had largely, but not only, political prisoners. And today's prisoners are largely, but not only, basically the victims of racism. People who were using drugs or selling drugs as a means of survival and were caught by hyper policing stuff. There's a lot of people with trauma that need help, but like these are institutions of human torture and misery that serve absolutely no purpose. They don't prevent crime. Locking these people up does nothing for anyone. All of these people have things they can contribute, and there's much better ways of dealing with them. But in the meantime, like that's the thing, is like the Bastille Day is not about a reform to make the criminal justice system better in pre-revolutionary France. It's about tearing down institutions of social control, which the ruling class were using to demoralize and destroy their opposition amongst the people. That's what these things are.
We should write it. We should write into Angela Davis and see where she is on the 2026 Bastille Day plan. And I think that this might be finally what gets us the FBI knocking on the door. So thank you. Let's wrap it up.
Done and dusted?
Done and dusted.
Your powers will fade as you grow old. You're on the make, and you don't do regret. You're always out for what you can get. You think like a snake, and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old.
I love you.
Why is your mic like nicely positioned?
I don't know. I understand three-dimensionality. Scoot a little bit further away from the mic. Scoot your chair away from the mic a little bit. Scoot your laptop towards you and that stuff. Keep going. The point is to get it further away from the mic. So you put it's closer to the mic. Put it that way.
But you want me to talk this way.
Now swivel it all the way around. Good. Now one of these. Yeah. Now move it like this. Like hold it like that. Okay. Now look towards me and move the mic with you. Good. Now move the laptop. No, you don't want to do this every time you talk. You want to be able to look and talk. So get it how you want it. So you can look at me and your laptop, and then move your laptop where you want it to be.